My name is Sarah, and at 28, I was seconds away from turning my car key when a stranger's scream stopped me cold. 6 months after my husband Ethan's suspicious death, his family had summoned me to an inheritance meeting, barely hiding their contempt for the woman they'd always called a gold digger. But as I sat in that parking garage, a terrified teenager pounding on my window, yelling something about my brother-in-law paying him to, he never finished that sentence before running away. The note I found hidden under my seat simply read, "Don't trust the signatures." What happened over the next 3 hours would expose a conspiracy that went deeper than greed and prove that sometimes the people trying to save you are the ones you'd least expect. If you are watching this video right now, I would love to know where you're from. Drop it in the comment section below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about family relationships that take unexpected turns. The morning light filtered through my bedroom curtains with a cruelty I hadn't expected. 6 months since Ethan's funeral, and somehow the sun still rose, indifferent to the hollow space beside me in our bed. I stood before the mirror, adjusting the collar of my black blazer for the third time, trying to armor myself for what lay ahead. The estate meeting. The vultures circling. My hands trembled as I applied lipstick. Not too much, Ethan's family would judge. Not too little, they'd call me pathetic. There was no winning with the Blackwood clan, never had been. From the moment Ethan introduced me at that country club dinner 8 years ago, I'd seen it in their eyes. Gold digger. Social climber. Not one of us. She's pretty enough, his sister Sloane had said within earshot that first night, swirling her martini. But pretty doesn't last. Money does. If only they knew. Ethan and I had met at a bookstore, both reaching for the same copy of Neruda's poetry. He'd been wearing a Yankees cap and faded jeans, nothing like the three-piece suits his family demanded. We talked for hours over coffee that turned into dinner, that turned into breakfast. 3 weeks later, he'd mentioned his last name, his family's fortune, almost apologetically. By then, I was already in love with the man who quoted Keats and made terrible puns, who volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends and could never remember where he'd left his car keys. The flashbacks came unbidden as I fastened my watch, Ethan's gift for our 5th anniversary. His family's hostility had only grown after our small courthouse wedding. We'd chosen it over their demanded society spectacle, and they'd never forgiven either of us. Ethan had tried to bridge the gap for years, dragging me to family dinners where conversation felt like walking through a minefield. "They'll come around," he'd always said, squeezing my hand under the table while his brother Caleb made snide remarks about Ethan's little experiment in slumming. But they never did. And now, with Ethan gone, the gloves were off. I grabbed my purse, checking twice for the documents my lawyer had prepared. The house felt too quiet, each footstep echoing as I made my way to the garage. Ethan's presence lingered everywhere, his coffee mug still on the kitchen counter, his reading glasses on the side table, that ridiculous singing fish he'd bought as a joke still hanging in the hallway. The car accident had been so sudden, so suspicious. The police called it tragic but routine, wet roads, poor visibility. But Ethan had been a careful driver, obsessively so. And that last phone call, just hours before, "Listen to me," he'd said, his voice tight with something I'd never heard before. Of fear? "I'm heading to meet Harrington about some discrepancies I found. If anything happens to me, don't trust them. Any of them. Promise me." I'd laughed it off. "Nothing's going to happen. You're being paranoid." "Promise me, Sarah." "I promise." But Ethan. The line had gone dead. 4 hours later, the police were at my door. I slid into the driver's seat of my sedan. We'd sold Ethan's BMW months ago. I couldn't bear to see it in the garage. The drive to downtown stretched before me like a gauntlet. Each red light felt deliberate, giving me too much time to think. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. The courthouse district loomed ahead, all marble and menace. I'd been there once before with Ethan, updating our wills ironically enough. He'd insisted on it after Caleb had made some comment about protecting family assets from outsiders. The memory stung fresh. I pulled into the parking structure adjacent to Harrington's building, spiraling up to the 3rd floor where I found a spot near the stairwell. My phone showed 9:47 a.m. The meeting was at 10 o'clock. I sat for a moment, engine still running, trying to calm my racing heart. That's when I realized I'd left the supplementary documents in my trunk, the ones proving Ethan's additional life insurance policy that named me sole beneficiary. Caleb would contest it, I knew, but I needed every piece of ammunition. I killed the engine and walked around to the trunk, retrieving the manila folder. The parking structure was eerily quiet, just the distant echo of car doors and footsteps. I returned to the driver's door, folder clutched against my chest, and slipped back inside. The key was halfway to the ignition when the world exploded.
Bang! Bang! Bang!
The sound against my window was so loud, so sudden, that I screamed. A face pressed against the glass. A kid, couldn't be more than 17, skinny and wild-eyed, his fists still raised. "Don't start it," he screamed, his voice muffled but frantic through the glass. "Don't start the car." My hand froze on the key. The boy's face was pale, streaked with sweat despite the cool morning. His eyes darted between me and something behind him. "Your husband's brother paid me to." He choked on the words, looking over his shoulder again. Then, as suddenly as he'd appeared, he bolted. His worn sneakers slapped against the concrete as he disappeared between the parked cars, leaving me frozen in place, key still extended toward the ignition. My heart hammered against my ribs. Paid him to what? My mind raced through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. The car. Something was wrong with the car. I carefully extracted the key, my hand shaking so violently I nearly dropped it. Through the windshield, I could see a few people on the level below looking up, probably wondering about the commotion. An older woman with shopping bags. A man in a suit checking his phone. Normal people living normal lives while mine tilted off its axis. Slowly, carefully, I opened the door and stepped out. My legs felt like water. The boy was gone, vanished into the maze of the parking structure. I stood there, clutching the car door, afraid to look away from the vehicle as if it might explode just from my gaze. "You okay, miss?" I jumped. A security guard approached, his hand resting casually on his radio. There was a boy," he said. I couldn't finish. "How did you explain that your brother-in-law might have sabotaged your car without sounding completely paranoid?" "Lot of homeless kids hang around here," the guard said, already losing interest. "They bang on windows, ask for money. You want me to call the cops?" "No, I looked at my car, then at my watch.
9:54 Uhr morgens.
"No, thank you." He shrugged and wandered off, probably dismissing me as another nervous woman scared by city kids. But that boy hadn't been asking for money. The terror in his eyes had been real. I circled my car slowly, using my phone's flashlight to peer under the wheel wells. Nothing obvious, but what did I know about car bombs? Did they even exist outside of movies? The absurdity of the thought warred with the very real fear coursing through my veins. That's when I decided to check inside, more thoroughly. The back seat was empty except for an umbrella and one of Ethan's old sweaters I couldn't bring myself to remove. The glove compartment held registration papers, insurance cards, and an ancient pack of gum. But as I leaned across to close it, something white caught my eye, wedged deep under the driver's seat. I had to contort myself to reach it, my fingers just barely grasping the edge of what felt like paper. It was a folded note, the creases sharp and new. Someone had placed it there recently. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. 5 words in block letters. Don't trust the signatures. The parking structure suddenly felt cavernous and threatening. Every shadow could hide someone watching. Every passing car made me flinch. I locked the car for all the good that did if someone had already been inside, and started walking toward the stairwell. My phone buzzed. "Caleb, meeting starts in 5 minutes. Don't keep the family waiting." The family, the inheritance, the signatures. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? A teenager warned me about my car but ran away? I found a cryptic note. My brother-in-law sent a passive-aggressive text. They'd file a report and send me on my way. Meanwhile, Caleb and the others would use my absence to push through whatever they'd planned.
No.
Ethan had warned me not to trust them. The boy had risked something to warn me too. And that note, someone was trying to help me, even if I didn't understand how or why. I gripped my purse tighter, felt the weight of the documents inside. Whatever game they were playing, I wouldn't make it easy. I owed Ethan that much. The walk to Harrington's building felt like crossing a battlefield. Every step was deliberate, calculated. The morning crowd moved around me. Lawyers with their briefcases, assistants with coffee runs, all oblivious to the war about to wage 20 floors above. The lobby was all marble and modern art, designed to intimidate. I signed in at the security desk, my signature shakier than I'd like. The elevator ride felt eternal, my reflection in the polished door showing a woman I barely recognized, pale, thin, shadows under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. Floor 20. The doors opened to Harrington and Associates' reception area. All dark wood and leather, oil paintings of stern-looking founders judging from their frames. Mrs. Blackwood, the receptionist said with professional sympathy. They're waiting in conference room A. They're waiting. Like predators. Like vultures. I straightened my blazer, lifted my chin, and walked toward whatever trap they'd set. Conference room A was exactly what you'd expect from a law firm that had been managing the Blackwood family fortune for 3 generations, intimidating by design. The long polished mahogany table reflected the faces of Ethan's family like a dark mirror, distorting their features into something even more unpleasant than reality. They'd arranged themselves strategically, I noticed. Caleb at the far end, playing patriarch in Ethan's father's absence. The old man was in Switzerland, too grief-stricken to attend, though he'd never shown much grief when Ethan was alive. Sloane sat to Caleb's right, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her wine glass, even though it was barely 10 a.m. Various cousins and aunts filled the sides, creating a gauntlet I'd have to walk. The only empty chair was at the opposite end from Caleb, isolated. Of course. Sarah, Caleb said, not bothering to stand. So good of you to finally join us. I was 3 minutes late. The teen's warning had cost me those minutes, but looking at Caleb's satisfied smirk, I wondered if that had been the point. Throw me off balance. Make me appear unstable, unreliable. Caleb, I nodded, taking my seat with as much grace as I could muster. My eyes swept the room, cataloging faces. Some wouldn't meet my gaze. Aunt Patricia, who'd always been kind when Ethan was present. Others stared with open hostility. Cousin Marcus, who'd once drunkenly told me I'd never really be family. Mr. Harrington sat to Caleb's left, a stack of documents before him. The elderly lawyer had been Ethan's father's friend since Yale, but friendship clearly didn't extend to wives of dead sons. His fingers drummed nervously against the papers, and he avoided my eyes completely. Shall we begin? Harrington's voice cracked slightly. He cleared his throat and tried again. We're here to discuss the disposition of Ethan Blackwood's estate, as outlined in his last will and testament. Which version? I asked quietly. The room went still. Sloane's wine glass paused midway to her lips. I beg your pardon? Harrington blinked rapidly. I asked which version. Ethan updated his will 6 months before he died. I want to make sure we're reading from the correct one. Of course. Harrington shuffled papers with suddenly clumsy fingers. The will dated January 15th of this year. That was the right date, but something in his manner made my skin crawl. I thought of the note. Don't trust the signatures. Please continue, I said, folding my hands in my lap to hide their trembling. Harrington began reading in a monotone that made Shakespeare sound exciting. The legalese washed over me, but I forced myself to focus on every word. The family properties were mentioned, the estate in the Hamptons, the brownstone in Manhattan, various international holdings. All remaining with the family trust, as Ethan and I had discussed. We'd never wanted those golden cages, anyway. But then Harrington reached the personal assets and things got interesting. The Riverside property in Cold Spring shall be liquidated, with proceeds distributed equally among surviving family members. Stop. The word escaped before I could think better of it. Harrington looked up, annoyed. Mrs. Blackwood, please save questions until... That's wrong. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to find the photo I'd taken of our copy of the will. The Riverside property was specifically left to me. Ethan bought it with his own money, not family funds. We spent our anniversaries there. Caleb leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smile playing at his lips. You must be confused, Sarah. Grief does strange things to memory. I'm not confused. I found the photo, zoomed in. It says right here. That's not a legal document, Harrington interrupted. A phone photo has no standing. We're dealing with the original, notarized version. Then show me the original. Harrington slid a packet across the table. It took 3 people passing it hand to hand before it reached me. Another little power play. I flipped through to the relevant section, and my blood went cold. The words were different. The Riverside property clause had been altered, just as Harrington had read. But something was off about the text, a faint blur around certain words, the baseline slightly misaligned. This has been tampered with, I said. Sloane laughed, a bright, cruel sound.
Oh, Sarah.
This is getting embarrassing. Look at it. I held up the page. The font density is different here. And here. Someone's done a cut and paste job. These are serious accusations, Harrington said stiffly. Are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we look at the actual original, not this copy. This is the original. No, it's not. It's a printout. I can see the toner streaks. Caleb stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. We're here to execute Ethan's wishes, not indulge your paranoid fantasies. You're obviously not handling your grief well, Sarah. Perhaps you should excuse yourself. I'm not going anywhere. The tension in the room ratcheted up another notch. Several family members shifted uncomfortably. Good. Let them be uncomfortable. A soft knock interrupted the standoff. A waiter entered with a tray of water glasses, moving around the table with practiced efficiency. When he reached me, he leaned in slightly, ostensibly to place the glass. Don't let them rush you, he whispered, barely moving his lips. I looked up sharply, but he was already moving on, his face professionally blank. My eyes tracked him to the door, where he paused for just a moment, his gaze flicking meaningfully toward Caleb before he left. An ally? Or another trap? Harrington resumed reading, his voice even more monotonous. The investment accounts held at Goldman Sachs, totaling approximately. Mr. Harrington, I interrupted again. Before we continue, I need to see the signature page. The signature page?
Yes.
I want to verify Ethan's signature. Harrington's hands definitely trembled now as he flipped to the back of the document. He held it up briefly, too far away for me to see clearly. I need to examine it closely. That's not necessary. It's entirely necessary. That's my husband's signature. I know it better than anyone in this room. Caleb's jaw clenched. Just show her the damn signature, so we can move on. Harrington slid the page down the table. This time, I stood and walked to retrieve it myself, not trusting the family passing chain. The signature looked right at first glance, the distinctive way Ethan crossed his T's, the flourish on the B of Blackwood. But when I held it up to the light, there were no indentations in the paper. No pressure marks. It had been printed on, not signed. This is a forgery. The room erupted. Sloane slammed her wine glass down. Marcus stood up, so fast his chair tipped backward. Caleb's face went from red to purple. How dare you? Caleb snarled. You walk in here, to our family's law firm, and accuse us of. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm stating a fact. This signature is printed, not written. Run your finger over it. There's no texture. Enough, Caleb roared. Mr. Harrington, can we proceed without her? She's clearly having some kind of breakdown. I'm afraid Mrs. Blackwood is a primary beneficiary, Harrington said weakly. She needs to be present. Then get her to sign off on the distribution and be done with it. Sign off on fraud? I don't think so. I pulled out my phone again. I'm calling my lawyer. You don't have a lawyer, Sloane sneered. You can't afford one without Ethan's money. Ava Reed, I said, finding her number. Ethan recommended her. said she was the only honest estate lawyer in the city. Harrington went pale at the name. Caleb's expression shifted from anger to something more dangerous. "Put the phone down, Sarah," Caleb said quietly. "Let's discuss this like family." "Family?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You've never treated me like family, and now you're trying to steal what Ethan left me." "Steal? We're protecting family assets from a gold digger who loved him." The words exploded out of me. "I loved him, which is more than most of you can say. You tolerated him when he towed the line and punished him when he didn't. He knew it. He told me." I stopped myself, but too late. Caleb's eyes sharpened. "Told you what?" he asked softly. "The last phone call. The warning." But I couldn't reveal that, not yet. "He told me you'd try something like this," I said instead. The waiter returned, this time with a coffee service nobody had requested. As he passed my chair, a napkin fluttered to the floor. I bent to pick it up and found writing on the inside. "Check the safe. Third drawer." "What safe? Harrington's office?" "I need to use the restroom," I announced.
Now.
Caleb's voice was suspicious. "Unless you'd prefer I don't, but this is already unpleasant enough." Sloane waved a dismissive hand. "Down the hall. Second door on the right." I knew where the bathroom was. I'd been here before with Ethan. But I wasn't going to the bathroom. The hallway stretched before me, plush carpet muffling my footsteps. I passed the bathroom and kept going, my heart pounding so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. Harrington's office was 3 doors down, and if someone caught me, but the waiter's note burned in my mind. He knew something. The teen in the parking garage knew something. Someone was trying to help me, and I had to trust that against every instinct screaming at me to run. The office door was closed but not locked, Harrington's arrogance assuming no one would dare. I slipped inside, immediately overwhelmed by the smell of old leather and expensive whiskey. The room was a shrine to old money, dark wood panels, first edition books, diplomas, and certificates covering one wall. The safe sat behind the desk, barely concealed by a terrible painting of foxhounds. Not very subtle, but then subtlety had never been the Blackwood way. It was a combination lock, and I had no idea. Third drawer. The note had said third drawer, not the safe. I yanked open Harrington's desk drawers. First, pens, letterhead, breath mints. Second, legal pads, sticky notes, a flask. Third, locked. I grabbed a letter opener from the first drawer and jimmied it into the lock. Ethan had taught me this, of all things, when we'd been locked out of our apartment on our 2nd anniversary. The lock popped with a satisfying click. Inside, beneath some financial statements, was a manila envelope with Ethan's handwriting across the front. For Sarah. Only Sarah. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single page, dated 1 week before his death. "My dear Sarah, if you're reading this, then my worst fears have come true. I've discovered something about Caleb and the family finances that puts us both in danger. He's been embezzling from the trust for years, using Harrington to cover it up with creative paperwork. I confronted him, and he threatened me." "Threatened you?" "I'm leaving this here because Harrington doesn't know I know about his spare key, the one hidden in the 3rd drawer. I've also left evidence with someone else, someone Caleb would never suspect. Trust the ones who seem beneath his notice. The Riverside property is yours, no matter what any documents say. I have the original deed in a safety deposit box at Chase, account number 447829. The key is in my old Yankees cap, you know the one. Don't let them bully you. Don't let them win. And know that every moment with you is worth whatever price I've paid. All my love, Ethan. P.S. If young Riley approaches you, trust him. I've been paying him to watch out for you. Riley." The teen from the parking garage had a name. I photographed the letter with my phone, then carefully folded it back into my purse. Evidence. Real evidence. The door handle rattled. I froze, then quickly closed the drawer and dove behind the massive desk just as the door opened. Footsteps entered. Heavy, deliberate. "I know you're in here." Caleb's voice, cold and controlled. "The bathroom excuse? Really, Sarah? You were always too predictable." I held my breath, pressing myself against the wood panels. He moved further into the room, his shoes visible from my hiding spot. "Here's what's going to happen," he continued, as if we were having a normal conversation. "You're going to come back to that conference room. You're going to sign the papers. You're going to take the generous settlement we're offering, far more than you deserve, and you're going to disappear. Find another rich husband to leech off." He was standing right by the desk now. One more step and he'd see me. Or, his voice dropped lower, "you could have an accident. Like Ethan. Wet roads are so dangerous, aren't they?" The confession hung in the air. He'd just admitted to murdering my husband. I pressed record on my phone, praying it would pick up his voice. "Nothing to say? Not hiding behind the desk like a child, are you?" He started to come around the desk. I had seconds to decide, confront him or run. Then a knock on the door. "Mr. Blackwood?" Harrington's nervous voice. Security called. "There's been an incident in the parking garage. A young man was caught trying to break into Mrs. Blackwood's car." "Riley." They had Riley. Caleb cursed under his breath. "Where is he now?" "Security is holding him. Should I call the police?"
No.
"Bring him here. And find Sarah. She's probably hiding somewhere like the coward she is." They left, and I waited a full minute before emerging from my hiding spot. My legs shook as I stood. Riley was in danger because he'd tried to warn me. The waiter, whoever he was, had risked his job to help me. I had to get back to the conference room before they realized I had the letter. But first, I pulled out my phone and did 3 things. I emailed the photos of Ethan's letter to myself, to Ava Reed, and to a journalist friend who covered financial crimes. Insurance, in case something happened to me. The walk back to the conference room felt like walking to my execution. Everyone looked up when I entered, some confused, others suspicious. Caleb wasn't back yet. "Feeling better?" Sloane asked with false sweetness. "Much." I returned to my seat, placing my purse carefully on the table where I could reach it quickly. Harrington seemed even more nervous now, constantly glancing at the door. "Perhaps we should take a break until—" The door burst open. Caleb dragged in Riley. That was definitely him, the same skinny kid from the parking garage, though now with a security guard's hand on his shoulder. The boy's eye was swelling shut, and blood trickled from his nose. "Look what we found," Caleb announced. "A little thief trying to break into Sarah's car. Says he knows her." Riley's eyes found mine, wide with fear and apology. "I don't know him," I lied.
No.
Caleb squeezed Riley's shoulder, making him wince. "Then you won't mind if we press charges. Breaking and entering, attempted theft. He's just a kid." "A kid who coincidentally targeted your car? During our meeting?" Caleb's smile was predatory. "Unless there's something you want to tell us?" This was the trap. Admit I knew Riley, and they'd use it against me somehow. Deny it, and they'd have him arrested, or worse. Riley made the choice for me. He paid me. The words burst out of him. "Mr. Blackwood paid me to mess with her car. Gave me $2,000 in cash. Said to cut the brake line, but I couldn't do it. So I warned her instead." The conference room went dead silent. Even Sloane looked shocked. Several family members turned to stare at Caleb, whose face had gone from red to white. The boy is obviously lying. Riley pulled a roll of bills from his pocket, hands shaking. Sequential serial numbers. From the ATM at Chase on 42nd. Check the cameras. Yesterday for PM. I stood slowly, my voice steady despite the tornado inside me. "Mr. Harrington, I believe we need to call the police now." "Sit down," Caleb snarled.
No.
I pulled out Ethan's letter, holding it high. "I have here a letter from Ethan detailing your embezzlement. I have this young man's testimony that you tried to have me killed. And I have a recording of you admitting to murdering my husband." The room exploded into chaos. Sloane screaming at Caleb. Cousins backing away from the table. Harrington looking like he might faint. And through it all, Caleb's eyes never left mine, cold and calculating, like a snake preparing to strike. The war Ethan had warned me about had finally begun. But now, I wasn't fighting alone. The chaos in the conference room lasted exactly 12 seconds. I counted them, each tick of the wall clock marking another moment of Caleb's carefully constructed world crumbling. Then, like a switch had been flipped, he transformed. The rage melted from his face, replaced by something far more dangerous. Cold calculation. "Everyone sit down," he commanded, and the authority in his voice was absolute. Even Sloane, mid-screech, fell silent and sank into her chair. "Sarah, you're grieving. You're confused. This boy is clearly disturbed, probably high on something. And that letter could be anyone's handwriting. It's Ethan's. Prove it." He straightened his tie, a gesture so casual it was insulting. "Prove any of it. A phone recording made illegally in a private office? Inadmissible. A letter conveniently found during your snooping?
Could be forged.
A drug-addicted teenager's testimony." "I'm not on drugs," Riley protested, but the security guard's grip on his shoulder tightened, silencing him. I met Caleb's gaze steadily. "Then you won't mind if we examine the original will. The actual original, not the copy you've been passing around." "Mr. Harrington?" Caleb didn't look away from me. "Show Mrs. Blackwood the original documents." Harrington's hands trembled as he opened his briefcase. But I wasn't watching him. I was watching the paralegal in the corner, a young man whose face had gone progressively paler since Riley's accusation. He kept glancing at his laptop, then at the door, like he wanted to run. "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the rustling papers, "I'd like to see the scanner logs first." From this morning, the paralegal dropped his laptop. It clattered on the conference table and several people jumped. "Scanner logs." Harrington's voice cracked. "Every modern office scanner keeps a digital log. Time stamps, user ID, number of pages." I pulled out my phone, finding the photos I'd taken of the whole pages. "These documents show signs of digital manipulation. Misaligned baselines here, toner density, variations here. Someone scanned Ethan's signature and pasted it onto new pages." I turned to the paralegal. "What's your name?"
David Shen.
"David, did Mr. Harrington ask you to prepare documents this morning?" David's eyes darted between Harrington and Caleb. The security guards still held Riley, but everyone's attention had shifted to the trembling paralegal. I can't.
I'll lose my job."
"You'll lose more than that if you're complicit in fraud and attempted murder," I said quietly. "But if you tell the truth now, you're a witness, not an accomplice." The waiter, I still didn't know his name, chose that moment to return. He moved around the table refilling water glasses, but when he reached David, he leaned in slightly. "The cops are already in the lobby," he murmured, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Someone called about the brake lines." That was a lie. I could tell from the slight smile playing at his lips. But David couldn't. "I kept copies." David burst out, yanking a USB drive from his pocket. "Mr. Harrington had me scan Mr. Blackwood's old will and create new pages. He said it was for comparison purposes, but then he had me align the signature and print them on aged paper. I knew it was wrong, but he said Mr. Caleb would fire me if I didn't." "Shut up." Harrington stood so fast his chair toppled backward. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." David's fear had transformed into something like relief. "I have the emails. Mr. Harrington's instructions. Mr. Caleb's authorization. Timestamps showing the documents were created at 7:47 this morning." I pulled out the envelope of cash Riley had shown, the sequential bills. "Let me guess. Caleb withdrew this money from the Chase branch on 42nd Street yesterday at 4 p.m. The same bills he used to pay Riley to sabotage my car. Should we check the ATM cameras?" Sloane stood abruptly, grabbing her purse. "I'm not staying for this." "Sit down," I said sharply. "You're all going to stay and hear this." "You can't." "I can and I will." I pulled out a second document from my purse, one I'd been saving. "This is a court summons. Ava Reed filed an emergency injunction 20 minutes ago to freeze all estate transfers pending investigation of fraud." That was a bluff. I hadn't had time to contact Ava yet, but they didn't know that. Marcus, one of the cousins, cleared his throat. "Caleb, what the hell is going on?" "Nothing is going on." This is all. Mr. Blackwood. The waiter stepped forward, and I finally got a good look at him. Mid-30s, Hispanic, with intelligent eyes that had been watching everything. My name is Luis Martinez. Ethan Blackwood asked me 6 months ago to watch these proceedings if anything happened to him. You're a waiter, Caleb sneered. I'm a law student, Luis corrected. Working my way through school. Ethan found out and started mentoring me. He said if his family ever tried to alter his will, I should document everything. He pulled out his phone. I've been recording this entire meeting. The blood drained from Caleb's face. In New York, only one party needed to consent to recording, and Luis was that party. That's entrapment. No, it's evidence. I stood, gathering my documents. Evidence that you embezzled from the family trust. Evidence that you conspired with Mr. Harrington to forge documents. Evidence that you attempted to have me killed. I looked him straight in the eye. Evidence that you murdered my husband. You can't prove that last part, Caleb said, but his voice had lost its power. Wet roads. I quoted his earlier words. So dangerous. You said it yourself, in Harrington's office. Luis, did you happen to place any recording devices in there?
Luis Mailed.
Mr. Blackwood, Ethan, gave me a key months ago. Said to leave a voice-activated recorder in the third drawer if anything happened to him. It's been there for 6 months, uploading to the cloud. That was why Ethan's letter had mentioned the third drawer. Not just for me to find it, but because he knew it was being monitored. Riley finally spoke up, his voice stronger now. I took pictures too. Of Mr. Caleb giving me the money. Of the tools he wanted me to use. They're all uploaded to my Google Drive. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, Mrs. Blackwood. He said he'd hurt my sister if I didn't do it. But when I saw you this morning, you looked so much like her and I couldn't. You did the right thing, I told him gently. You saved my life. The security guard had loosened his grip on Riley, looking uncertain. Several family members had pulled out their phones, either recording or texting frantically. Sloan had started crying, whether from shame or self-pity. I couldn't tell. Caleb made one last desperate play. Even if any of this is true, which it isn't, you can't stop the will from being executed. I'm the executor. It's legal. Actually, I said, pulling out the final document from my purse, the one I'd photographed in Harrington's office. Ethan changed the executor 3 weeks before he died. It's filed with the courthouse. I'm the executor now. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, from the hallway, came the sound I'd been waiting for, heavy footsteps, multiple sets, and the static crackle of police radios. One more thing, I said as the door opened to reveal 2 detectives and several uniformed officers. That safety deposit box Ethan mentioned in his letter? I opened it this morning before coming here. It contains documents showing every fraudulent transaction you've made over the last 5 years, Caleb. Every penny you stole. Every lie you told. That was another bluff. I hadn't had time to get to the bank. But Caleb's reaction told me everything I needed to know. He lunged across the table, hands reaching for my throat, spittle flying as he screamed obscenities. The police were on him in seconds, pulling him back, cuffs clicking around his wrists. Harrington tried to slip out during the commotion, but Luis had positioned himself by the door. Officers, Luis said calmly, Mr. Harrington is a co-conspirator. David Chun has evidence. David held up the USB drive like a talisman. Everything's on here. Everything. The parking garage had been transformed into a crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off my car while a police technician photographed the undercarriage. Detective Morrison, a woman with sharp eyes and graying temples, walked me through what they'd found. Clean cut on the brake line, she said, pointing to her tablet showing a close-up image. Professional tool, probably a pipe cutter. If you'd driven out of here, especially down that steep ramp, you wouldn't have been able to stop. My stomach churned. I'd been 3 seconds from turning that key. We found this too. She held up an evidence bag containing a box cutter. Partial print on it. We're running it now. Riley stood nearby, giving his statement to another detective. The paramedics had cleaned up his face, but the bruising was already dark purple. I'd insisted they check him over before anything else. Mrs. Blackwood? Davidson appeared at my elbow, laptop bag slung over his shoulder. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in the last hour. I need to show you something. We moved away from the crime scene tape to a quieter corner of the garage. David opened his laptop on the hood of a patrol car, fingers flying over the keys. After he left the conference room, I started going through Mr. Harrington's files. I had access because I helped maintain his digital archives. Several windows popped up on screen. Look at this. Email after email filled the screen. Conversations between Caleb and Harrington going back 2 years. The subject lines alone were damning. Adjustment needed on Q3 trust disbursement. Urgent. Cover for Tuesday's withdrawal. Problem with Ethan. Strategy discussion. This one. David highlighted an email from 3 weeks before Ethan's death. Caleb writes, he knows about the Singapore account. He's threatening to go to the authorities. This needs to be handled permanently. And Harrington's response? David clicked. Harrington had replied, understood. The break line suggestion seems most plausible for accident. Have contact ready. My hands clenched into fists. They'd planned it. Discussed murdering my husband like they were planning a business lunch. I've sent everything to your lawyer, David said. Ms. Reed, right? I also sent copies to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. This goes beyond state jurisdiction. They were moving money internationally. Why are you helping me? David closed the laptop, looking older than his 20-something years. Because 3 months ago, Mr. Harrington had me forge a codicil to another client's will. The old woman died 2 weeks later. Heart attack, they said. But she was healthy when she came in to discuss concerns about her nephew. He met my eyes. I think you're not the first spouse they've done this to. Detective Morrison returned, her expression grim but satisfied. The print matches Caleb Blackwood. We also pulled security footage from yesterday showing him purchasing the tools at a hardware store on Lexington. He paid cash, but he parked in their lot, license plate clear as day. What about Mr. Harrington? Being processed now. He's already asking for a deal. Seems very eager to testify against Mr. Blackwood in exchange for leniency. Of course he was. Rats and sinking ships. Luis appeared, having finally given his statement. Mrs. Blackwood, there's something else you should know. Ethan left more than just documents in that safety deposit box. He handed me his phone, showing a video file. He sent this to me the night before he died, asked me to save it for you if anything happened. I hit play with trembling fingers. Ethan's face filled the screen, sitting in what looked like his car. It was dark, probably late. Sarah, my love, if you're seeing this, then I'm gone, and they're responsible. I'm about to meet Harrington at his office. He thinks I'm coming to negotiate, but I'm wearing a wire. The FBI knows Agent Patricia Reeves has been building a case. If something happens to me, find her. He paused, rubbing his face, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. The Riverside house in Cold Spring has more than just memories, sweetheart. Under the floorboards in our bedroom, beneath that creaky plank you always complained about, there's a backup drive with everything. 5 years of evidence. Not just Caleb's embezzlement, but the whole network. His connections to city officials, bribes, tax evasion, even some deals that border on trafficking. Another pause. His eyes glistened. I'm sorry I didn't tell you everything. I wanted to protect you. But if you're watching this, my protection failed. So now I need you to be brave. Braver than I was. Don't let them win. And Sarah? That last voicemail I left you, check my draft emails. There's one for you, I never sent. Password is our first dance song, no spaces, all lowercase. The video ended. I stood there in the parking garage, surrounded by police and evidence of attempted murder, and for the first time since Ethan's death, I felt him with me.
Not gone.
Not lost. Still fighting beside me through the breadcrumbs he'd left. Mrs. Blackwood, Detective Morrison touched my shoulder gently. We need to get you somewhere safe while we process the scene and arrests. Is there somewhere? Cold Spring, I said firmly. I need to go to our house in Cold Spring. I'll drive you, Luis offered. My car's on the next level.
Why?
I asked him, "Why did Ethan trust you? Why are you risking so much?" Luis smiled sadly. My father was a janitor in the Blackwood building for 30 years. When he got sick, really sick, the family insurance wouldn't cover his treatment. Experimental therapy, they called it, not approved.
He paused.
Ethan paid for everything. Off the books. Never asked for anything in return. Never even told my father it was him. I only found out by accident. That sounds like Ethan. He saved my father's life. When I got into law school, he offered to mentor me. Said the legal system needed more people who understood what it was like to be powerless. Luis started walking toward the stairwell. He told me once that the greatest rebellion against his family wasn't marrying you. It was choosing to be kind in a clan that worshipped cruelty. We reached his car, a beat-up Honda that had seen better decades. As I slid into the passenger seat, my phone buzzed. Ava Reed. "Sarah, I've been reviewing the documents David Chin sent. This is bigger than just your inheritance. The FBI wants to meet with you. Can you come to my office? First, I need to go to Cold Spring. There's evidence hidden at the house. I'll meet you there with the FBI agents. Sarah, you did incredibly well today. Ethan would be proud." The drive to Cold Spring took 90 minutes. Luis drove carefully, checking mirrors constantly. Neither of us spoke much. I used the silence to log into Ethan's email account on my phone. The drafts folder had one unsent message, dated the night he died. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then you know the truth. I'm not coming home. I can feel it. The way Caleb looked at me today, the tremor in Harrington's voice when I confronted him. They're going to kill me. I could run, take you, and disappear. We have enough money hidden away, money they don't know about. But running means they win. It means other families suffer what we've suffered. Other spouses lose what we've lost. So I'm going to that meeting wearing a wire, knowing what will probably happen. It's not brave, I'm terrified. But I'm more terrified of a world where people like Caleb always win. Here's what you need to know. You are stronger than you think. You were never the gold digger they accused you of being. You were the gold itself. You made me better, braver, more human than anyone in my family ever taught me to be. When this is over, and it will end, because you'll end it, sell everything except the Riverside house. Take the money and start that literacy foundation we talked about. Help kids like Riley have a chance. Make something beautiful from all this ugliness. I love you more than words can say. Every morning I woke up beside you as a gift I probably didn't deserve but treasured anyway. Don't mourn too long.
Live.
Find love again, someone who deserves you more than I did. Be happy. That's not a request, it's a demand. Be gloriously, defiantly happy. It's the ultimate revenge against those who tried to break you. Forever yours, Ethan. P.S. The creaky floorboard isn't the only hiding spot. Check behind the painting of the lighthouse, the one you said was aggressively nautical. There's something there just for you. I was crying by the time we reached Cold Spring. Luis pretended not to notice, just handed me a packet of tissues from his glove compartment. The Riverside house stood exactly as I'd left it 6 months ago, frozen in time like a photograph. I'd been unable to return after Ethan's death. Too many memories, too much pain. But now, standing in our bedroom with FBI agent Patricia Reeves and Ava Reed, I felt Ethan's presence like a warm embrace. "Under this floorboard," I said, kneeling beside the bed. Agent Reeves, a tall black woman with kind eyes and an air of quiet authority, helped me pry up the loose plank. Beneath it, wrapped in waterproof plastic, was a hard drive and a thick manila envelope. "How long have you been investigating the Blackwoods?" I asked her. 3 years. Ethan came to us 18 months ago. He'd discovered discrepancies in the family trust, money disappearing and reappearing in offshore accounts. We were building a RICO case, but we needed more evidence. "Why didn't you protect him?" The question hung heavy in the air. Agent Reeves' expression softened. "We tried. He refused protective custody, said it would tip them off. He was supposed to wear a wire to that last meeting, but..." She paused. "The device was damaged in the crash. We couldn't prove it wasn't an accident. Until now, Ava said, reading through files on the hard drive. This is extensive. Financial records, recorded conversations, photographs of documents. Ethan built an airtight case. I moved to the lighthouse painting, the one I'd always thought was too touristy for our bedroom. Behind it was a small wall safe I'd never known existed. The combination was our anniversary date. Inside was a velvet jewelry box and another envelope. The box contained a simple gold necklace with a lighthouse pendant. Not expensive, but beautiful. The envelope held a single photograph, us on our wedding day at the courthouse, laughing as rice rained down, looking impossibly young and ridiculously happy. On the back, in Ethan's handwriting, the only moment that ever mattered. Everything else was just noise. The courtroom was packed. Media had been restricted, but sketch artists filled the back row, capturing every moment. I sat in the witness section, Riley beside me. He'd cleaned up, wearing a suit Luis had helped him pick out. His sister was there too, a younger version of Riley with the same determined eyes. Judge Catherine Wu presided with an iron fist, shutting down every attempted interruption from Caleb's high-priced legal team. The court has reviewed extensive evidence of fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder, and murder in the first degree, she began, her voice carrying absolute authority. The forensic document examination is conclusive. The will presented by Mr. Harrington was forged using sophisticated but detectable digital manipulation. I watched Caleb at the defendant's table. His designer suit couldn't hide the orange jumpsuit underneath. He'd been denied bail as a flight risk. Sloane sat in the family section, but most of the other relatives had distanced themselves, probably already calling their own lawyers. Mr. Chin, the judge addressed David, who stood nervously at the witness stand. Your testimony and evidence have been invaluable. The court recognizes your cooperation. David had been granted immunity in exchange for his testimony. He'd spent 3 days on the stand, methodically walking through every forged document, every email, every instruction from Harrington and Caleb. Mr. Martinez, Judge Wu continued as Luis took the stand. The recordings you provided, made with Mr. Ethan Blackwood's consent, are admitted as evidence. Luis played the recording from Harrington's office, Caleb's voice filling the courtroom. You could have an accident. Like Ethan. Wet roads are so dangerous, aren't they? Several jury members visibly recoiled. Riley testified next, his voice steady despite his youth. He explained the payment, the instructions, the moment he decided he couldn't go through with it. The prosecutor showed the sequential bills, the ATM footage, the tools with Caleb's fingerprints. I'm not proud of taking the money, Riley said. But my sister has medical bills, and Mr. Caleb knew that. He found out somehow and used it against me. Said he'd pay for her treatment if I did this one thing. Said he'd make sure she never got treatment anywhere if I didn't. What made you warn Mrs. Blackwood instead? The prosecutor asked. Riley looked at me. My sister survived cancer because of donations from strangers. Good people who didn't know us but helped anyway. Mrs. Blackwood looked like someone's sister too. I couldn't take that away from someone else. When Agent Reeves took the stand, she presented the FBI's 3-year investigation. Financial crimes spanning decades, money laundering through real estate, bribes to city officials. The Blackwood empire wasn't just corrupt, it was a criminal enterprise. Mr. Ethan Blackwood was our confidential informant, she testified. He wore a wire to 3 family meetings before his death. We have recordings of Caleb Blackwood discussing, quote, permanent solutions to the Ethan problem. Harrington had flipped completely, testifying against Caleb in exchange for a reduced sentence. He looked like he'd aged a decade in 2 weeks, his hands shaking as he detailed every crime they'd committed together. Caleb Blackwood came to me 5 years ago, he said. He'd been stealing from the trust and needed help covering it up. He had information about my own indiscretions. Gambling debts. He owned me from that moment. And Ethan Blackwood's death? Caleb said it would look like an accident. He had a contact, someone who could make it happen. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want to know. But the most damning testimony came from an unexpected source, the mechanic who'd serviced Caleb's cars for years. He'd come forward after seeing the news, carrying a burden he couldn't bear anymore. Mr. Caleb brought a car to me 3 days before the accident, he testified. Not his car, a rental. Same make and model as Mr. Ethan's vehicle. Asked me to show him how brake lines worked, said he was writing a novel and needed it for research. The mechanic's voice cracked. I showed him. God help me, I showed him exactly where to cut. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Caleb got life, without parole for murder in the first degree, plus consecutive sentences for attempted murder, fraud, and embezzlement totaling another 60 years. Harrington received 15 years with possibility of parole in 7. His cooperation had saved him from worse. As the bailiffs led Caleb away, he turned to look at me one last time. The hatred in his eyes was pure, undiluted. But behind it, I saw something else, fear. He'd spent his whole life believing money made him untouchable. Now he knew better. The Riverside house had been transformed into something Ethan and I had only dreamed about, a literacy center for at-risk youth. The main floor was now a library and computer lab. The upper floor held tutoring rooms and a small apartment where Luis lived as the center's director while he finished law school. Riley was our first graduate. He'd gotten his GED in record time and was now taking community college classes. His sister Mia volunteered on weekends, teaching younger kids to read. The medical bills that had almost destroyed their family were gone, paid from the first disbursement of Ethan's life insurance. Mrs. B. Riley called from the computer lab. That reporter's here. The one doing the story. I found the journalist. The friend I'd sent Ethan's letter to that first day, setting up in what used to be our living room. The painting of the lighthouse now hung prominently behind the reception desk, a reminder that even the gaudiest things could guide you home. This is quite a transformation, she said, looking around at children reading in beanbag chairs, teenagers working on homework, Louise helping a young woman with her college application essays. Ethan would have loved it, I said simply. The Blackwood family fortune. What happened to it all? The FBI seized most of it as proceeds of crime. What was legitimately Ethan's came to me. I kept this house, and enough to run the foundation. The rest went to restitution for the families Caleb had defrauded over the years. Any regrets? I thought about it, watching Riley help his sister with algebra homework, watching Louise explain legal concepts to a teenager considering law school, watching the late afternoon sun hit the river just the way it had the day Ethan proposed to me, on this very spot. No regrets, I said. Ethan believed in justice and second chances. Every kid who walks through these doors is proof that good can come from evil, that love is stronger than greed. Have you thought about what's next for you? Agent Reeves had offered me a position consulting with the FBI on financial crimes. My crash course in forensic document analysis had apparently impressed them. Ava Reed wanted me to join her practice, helping other spouses who found themselves fighting corrupt estates. I had options I'd never imagined. I'm exactly where I need to be, I said. That evening, after everyone had gone home, I stood on the deck overlooking the river. The cremation urn containing Ethan's ashes sat on the mantel inside. I still wasn't ready to let go completely. But I'd finally opened the last letter he'd left me, the one his lawyer had delivered after the trial ended. Sarah, if you're reading this, then you won. I knew you would. You were always the strongest person in any room. You just never believed it. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for not letting them win. Thank you for turning our love into something that will outlast both of us. The lighthouse painting is yours to do with as you wish, but may I suggest keeping it? Sometimes the things we think are tacky or wrong are exactly what we need to guide us home. Until we meet again, and we will. All my love, Ethan. P.S. Check your bank account. I may have hidden one more surprise. Consider it venture capital for whatever dream you chase next. Idishika. He'd left an account I never knew about, funded monthly for the last 5 years of our marriage. The note on the account read, "For Sarah's dreams, whatever they may be." The sun set over the river, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere, a child laughed in the distance. Somewhere, Riley was teaching his sister that she could be anything she wanted. Somewhere, Luis was preparing to become the lawyer Ethan had believed he could be. And here, in the house where love had lived and nearly died, justice had found a home. I placed my hand on my stomach, where the next surprise was growing, a secret I hadn't shared with anyone yet. The doctors called it a miracle, considering the stress of the last year. I called it Ethan's final gift, a piece of him that Caleb could never take away. We won. I whispered to the setting sun, to the river, to wherever Ethan might be listening. We won. If someone you trusted completely suddenly died, would you have the courage to fight their powerful family for the truth, even if it meant risking your own life? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, please like and subscribe for more tales of betrayal, justice, and unexpected courage.